think what has been done here is probably the best situation we have out of what we had to work with. And disappointed number of applicants. But I think with the team that they've got together, it should help the kids. And, you know, we're concerned about youth sport, we're concerned about people who are concerned about their children, and I think this is probably a good combination. But it's going to take years to get someone with experience because the kids have not gone through the college element and coming back into teaching, and that's going to take a while.
Any other comments, discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Lima?
Yes.
Mr. Rico?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Dow?
Yes.
Mr. LaPierre?
Yes.
Mrs. Solano?
Yes.
And I recommend that we do 4-2A and B together.
Move it.
Second.
Discussion. We point out on 4-2A that Brian Buzzard and we're rescinding the assistant coach position. He's going to stay on as a volunteer. It's personal.
Not Brian.
No, that's not all.
No, I'm talking about Brian Buzzard. He's taking him off as a paid assistant.
He was never a paid assistant. He was on there by typo from the second step.
Yeah. All the judge was saying was it was his choice to be a volunteer and that was the case.
Yeah, he was
And
volunteering
Dick,
last
what
year,
you're saying is coach was.
volunteering this year.
Any discussion? Let's call the roll.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Lima? Mr. Rico?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Dow?
Yes.
Mr. LaPierre?
Yes.
Mrs. Solano?
Yes.
Okay, placements 5, 1, 2, and 3 together.
Any discussion? No discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Lima?
Yes.
Mr. Rico?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Dow?
Yes.
Mr. LaPierre?
Yes.
Mrs. Solano?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I recommend that we do student issues together, 6-1 and 6-2.
There.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Solon. Discussion.
Okay. No, yeah, I didn't get the
Why is TV?
6-2B under, yeah, why isn't that under ECA? Why is it under field trips?
I don't know. Yeah,
Well, it's not in this.
I can see where it goes with field trips.
And again, now we're talking off-campus sports. Why isn't police coverage covered under our jurisdiction? We had this discussion earlier this year when we played on the turf field, and why is the booster club paying for that?
Well, why didn't we go to the ECA committee number one? Because I don't know from what I'm reading here whether that's really a scholastic game or a club game.
Varsity boys and
Varsity
girls
boys and
soccer.
girls soccer.
They want to play varsity, they want to play 3 games
Out of league. Out of town.
from their schedule at night. Is that how I'm doing it?
Well, okay, the question is, why didn't go to the ECA committee? We shouldn't have to be discussing this right now at all. So, and I agree, I don't know why the booster club got to pay for the police. They go someplace else to pay for the police. So that's why I'm not sure I know what the hell I'm looking at.
Well, the varsity boys and girls is pretty self-explanatory. It's the varsity team. We did it last year for 1 game. They want to do it for 3 games this year. So that ought not be confusing. The booster club fee for booster club paying for the police. I thought that was the agreement that you wanted to broker.
No,
Last year it happened because it just happened.
It happened happened because they didn't come to the board, they didn't have permission to do it, and they
was not-
did it.
And it was not approved, but
Hence the
normally.
8 months lead time.
Yeah.
But what I brought to the board, excuse me, what I brought to the board was that because there are teams, our district should be paying for it, not the booster club, the police coverage. I mean, if we have it on site here at the campus, we pay for it. So what's the difference of our team playing here versus there? Why is their booster paying for police
I
coverage?
suspect the rationale was it was the team electing to do this, and with that, they should carry the cost. Are you certain that we use the same number of police at each venue? Home game versus
Well,
game?
first of all, we don't use police coverage at the RV complex.
Sorry?
We do not use police coverage during the
Right.
daytime.
During the
This is a
daytime.
this will be a night
Right,
event.
it wouldn't be a night game at the complex.
Right.
Right, it wouldn't be a night game at
So
the
so the
complex.
team is electing to incur this expense. I think that's the
Well,
rationale.
there's the rationale of it. This is not what, and you're sure that this is a regularly scheduled game?
Yeah, it was NBC this past fall, they played NBC in October.
You want to table this until we get some more
Yeah,
clarity?
there's nothing with the election, it was October
Sounds like there's lots of
2012.
All right, let's table this till the next meeting. Let's have a discussion about the booster club piece of this thing, because I'm kind of of the same mind. We're gonna authorize someone to go off-site for the purpose of using lights, et cetera. It's our sanctioned game. I don't think we should expect an outside agency to pay for our expenses. I think that probably needs to be discussed.
Okay.
So I withdraw my motion and we can just go with 6.1 or 6.6.
6.2A.
2A.
Other discussion? We call roll?
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Lima? Mr. Dorico?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Dow?
Yes.
Mr. LaPierre?
Yes.
Mrs. Solon? Yes. Motion carries.
7 professional workshops, 7.1 and 7.2, 2 workshops that deal with really the same thing, Common Core standards, Common Core assessments.
Motion? Mrs. Sloan, second.
Right.
Mr. LaPierre, discussion.
Expo is the statewide convention, conference on technology in school, attended by superintendents. I'm actually on the NJASA statewide technology committee. It's not where I'm attending most superintendents, because this is going to be really our first chance to understand how we're going to equip the schools for 2 things I'm going to speak about tonight later: Common Core assessments and new observation models that can require a real shift in what we do.
What have you seen already?
I'm not a betting man, so I believe it's at Valley.
Yeah, I think we
Believe it or
can.
not, I'm just fucking talking.
Other discussion?
Get out of here.
Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Lima? Mr. Dorico?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Dow?
Yes.
Mr. LaPierre? Mrs. Solon? Yes. Okay, motion carries.
You have there the CUSAC report. Really, this is our sort of self-reflection. The more interesting thing for you will be probably at the April meeting after the statements come out and measure ourselves against ourselves, and I will present that data at the time. But this is the CUSAC report that Ms. Giovanelli and I, on her first or second day on the job, prepared along with members of the board, and the community, faculty, and submitted it for state vetting.
April is when you'll get.
They come out in March, I suspect by April we'll have a report.
Can I get a motion on 8? Mr. Lino. Make a second. And Mr. Diaz. Discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Lima? Mr. Dorico?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Dow?
Yes.
Mr. LaPierre?
Yes.
Mrs. Solon?
Because I do have two pretty substantive things to talk about, I'm only gonna focus on the one report, which is frankly all that we ever really talk about, in this case, the mandate. But the HIP report this month, there were no incidents. The one that you see in your report was found to be a non-peer, non-bullying event. It was actually a weekend text message that had a school manifestation 3 days later. So that's good. And as a side note, at roundtables, that's the trend that we're seeing as superintendents is a decrease, which suggests probably a couple things. A decrease in the number of incidents, a couple things. One, we're getting sort of better at understanding what is and what is not. And two, the sort of buzz that was created by the state mandate maybe has softened among our student parent population. Either way, it's good news.
We need to do.
We need to do a motion to accept the report.
We got a motion to accept this month's HIP report. Mr. Lino. Second. Second by Mr. Solon. Any other discussion? Call roll.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Lino? Mr. Dorico?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Dow?
Yes.
Mr. LaPierre?
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan?
Yes.
Motion carries.
So I wanted to report out to the board on two pretty weighty issues to give you a chance to sort of begin to cement it in your consciousness and think about and understand that how as a board we're going to need to move strategically to make both work for RV and work for the students that we serve. The first, which is going to come online at September 1st, 2012, so this school year, is a new teacher observation mechanism. And there's two really big components to that. There's the walkthrough observations, and there's a change in the number of observations required for both tenured and non-tenured, and that's on the formal observation side. The state has asked, and the state never really asks, they have compelled districts to select one of 4 models. Okay, they picked the models, and from a sort of curricular, pedagogical standpoint, they're all sound. They're all based on the best thinking of leading educators. John Marzano has one. He is probably the guru within ASCD, most respected, deeply published. His, for what it's worth, and apparently not a whole lot, happens to be my preference, very behaviorally driven. Then there's a Danielson model, which we frankly already have here at the school. The model that I inherited is very, very sound, very, very sound. It's also not worth its weight in anything if it isn't used properly. So I would just say that the work that preceded me was good work. There's a hybrid between the two of them. Myself and 3 administrators went to board accountant and had they're vendors, but they're also former superintendents, educational pundits, present these to us, and we are beginning to work through the process of which one we will select. The challenge for us is we sort of expect at some point in the next few years the state to say, okay, now we're all going to use that one. That is the direction that this is all going, command and control, right? From the curriculum, from the assessments, NJ SMART. Everything is becoming very aligned and very similar. So that's weighing on our mind. The cost is going to be extraordinary. We are required to train every teacher and every administrator, and the administrator's training is over several days. One thought that we had as a group of local superintendents, and I like to think that I was among the earliest advocates of this, but that the 6 schools that we are sort of related to, I guess our 5, ourselves and the 5 sending schools, all select the same one. There is some momentum behind that. It's not easy because we're all our own entity, and we're all trying to manage the buy-in at the school level. But I'm still hoping that we'll get there. And that's good for a couple of reasons. Obviously, economy of scale. We can purchase this thing together. We can obviously train, probably here at the biggest school, all of the teachers at once, and that would give us more buying power. Same thing for the administrators. I also think it just makes the right statement that students that spend their 12 or 13 years in our care in these five towns are taught by teachers who understand and conceptualize the act of teaching, the pedagogical practice of advancing the student learning the same way. I think there's virtue to that. So that's what we're hoping to move towards. And one of the five is I think having a little more trouble than the others. I think the other four and us are moving towards probably a Teachscape model, which is heavy on Danielson, and her work is again embedded in our current model. So that's important. There's technology purchases that are required. Now, some of them we got ahead of last year, in that every administrator will need a tablet to do these walkthroughs. There's the teacher training. Pemberton was one of the because they are a school in need. They received a grant. They have spent thus far $200,000. Now we're not as big as them, and we may not maybe do quite the sort of Cadillac training that they selected, but I think it would be unwise to expect that we could get off for less than $50,000 all in.
Dr. Jones, I have a question about the cost.
Yeah.
I probably, I'm sure I know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway.
You got another question?
The state, are they planning on providing the districts with funding for this training that they're mandating?
No.
Or is it another case of
No.
mandate without funding?
No support whatsoever.
Thank you.
So that's the small of the two things tonight. So do you want me to move right into the Common Core? Okay.
Yes.
So I remember back then, would you mind sitting in Peg's seat? You might find it more comfortable. So, and just hit the space bar every so often at the exact right time.
Okay.
So the other, oh, I'm sorry, if you all want to move. So something that won't come as a shock to you, but it is cataclysmic in the world of education, is the adoption of Common Core standards. And I want to talk to you about that because that will define the work, the internal work of this school for the next 5 years. And I'm not prone to hyperbole. This is big. It's not only as big as NCLB, it's the logical extension of NCLB, and it's going to require incredible focus. I'll answer your question now. We're on our own, and it is both state and federally mandated. And I'll tell you how those two are working together in just a second. Thank you. So very quickly, just to tell you how we got here, I think that always sort of helps. And it also will demonstrate the sort of bipartisan buy-in to what we are driving towards, this sort of national curriculum. Back in 1983, President Reagan, Secretary of Education William Bennett, commissioned and received a study called A Nation at Risk, which was a bit of a panic in that it showed slippage by U.S. students in ways important to them. So they began to move towards standard expectations. For the first time, standardizing what happens in schools. And at that time, Department of Education was all of 5 years old. People kind of forget that. It is now so big, so powerful, so heavily funded, it did not exist in 1977. Okay? So the next iteration of this, about 6 years later, was ironically the National Education Summit called by President George Herbert Walker Bush, and it was called, the governors actually convened, and the head of the Governors Association in 1989 was William Jefferson Clinton, and he and Bush collaborated on the next level of federal preferences for standards. Again, requiring schools, incentivized through funding, to adopt standards. And states began to move at that point in time. Virginia being among the first, their SOL standards, and that's when New Jersey adopted their first standard. And then, of course, we had H.R. 1, which became law in 2002, but was passed, proposed in 2001, the No Child Left Behind Act, which required standards and required testing. That led to high-stakes testing. Now we have Race to the Top. And Race to the Top, while not a reauthorization of the Elementary Secondary School Act, as NCLB was, but that is up for renewal in 1 year. This Race to the Top is merely the funding strategy chosen by the Obama administration. And what they have chosen to do is essentially tie all funding to doing things, behaviors that they are committed to, one of which is a deeper adoption of standards, in this case, Common Core. So their position on Race to the Top, which was a huge pot of money, was very simple. If you want to be eligible, adopt the Common Core standards. I equated this in an earlier presentation with, in fact, highway funding was tied